Hey, it's your friend and fellow working mum, Carina O'Brien, and welcome back to the Working Mama podcast, the show that helps you navigate work, motherhood, and everything in between. Today, we're talking about something every woman I know has felt, but most of us don't even realise is running the show. It's called good girl conditioning. You know the script: be polite, say yes, keep everyone happy, do it perfectly, don't rock the boat. For working mums, that pressure doubles. Be the good mum and the good employee. And you know the result? Burnout, resentment, and losing touch with who we really are. My guest today on the podcast is Dr. Michelle McQuaid. She has spent decades studying what helps people truly thrive, and her latest research reveals the real cost of trying to be the good girl everyone expects. And more importantly, how we can break free of this conditioning. Shell shares practical, science-backed tools to move from perfection and people-pleasing to self-compassion and courage, and how we can start showing up as our uniquely selves at work, at home, and everywhere in between. So if you've ever caught yourself saying, "Oh, just do it," or "I don't want to upset anyone," or you're simply tired of trying to do it all perfectly, this episode is your permission slip to stop being the good girl and start being you. But before we get into it, I would really appreciate if you'd be able to share this episode with a fellow working mum so she knows that she's not alone in the juggle and that there's a community here to support her. Let's get into it. Welcome, Shell. Welcome to the Working Mama podcast. How's your day going so far?
It's been good. I've got children away with fathers, so it's been a much smoother start to the day, Carina, than when they're here.
Oh, wow. Living the dream.
Yeah.
So as we get into it, Shell, do you want to just tell us a little bit about your journey and how you've got to doing the work that you are today? Because I know you've had quite a journey over the last few years.
Yeah, so I started my professional life in communication. I was trying to figure out how do we get messages out to people that helps change behavior so that we can all live lives that we enjoy more. And it fascinated me. I ended up working in big global companies all over the world. And in my early 30s, I was living in New York. My eldest son at the time was about 4 years old. On paper, it looked like I ticked all of life's boxes, like this was the dream in action. And I was struggling to find the energy to get out of bed each morning. I was like, what is wrong with me? Like, how can this not be it? And it really sent me searching for what does it take for us to thrive as human beings, because clearly what was on paper was not adding up. And so I started to get interested in the science of positive psychology, which was just emerging at that time. And it was a science of looking at what makes us happy, what makes us content and satisfied. How do we stay okay even when things are hard and not kind of just give up in a heap on the floor and feel like we're never going to get back up again? And as I was doing all of that research, I went eventually and did my master's in that area and then later a PhD, because I found not only could I apply it for home, but I was also using it a lot in my work as I started to help other people learn how did we thrive, how did we care for our well-being, even in the midst of struggle, how did we navigate change with each other. And so these days, that's what I've spent, the last years of my life doing. But of course, as a mum, you can't help but teach it to your kids as you go. Yes. So my boys are now 20 and 15, and it's funny hearing some of the positive psychology bits fly out of their mouths, even though they would tell me it was a terrible idea and I should never have done it to them. I always say, Carina, they'll be in therapy for the rest of their lives because their mother experimented extensively on them.
Oh, that's fantastic. So what has been your work now? And I know that you're very focused around overcoming the good girl conditioning. And we will also be upfront that you've written a book both for young girls, but also for older women. I was lucky enough to get a copy of this, and I have to say it's a very proactive, very resourceful book. But do you want to just also take us through what is this good girl conditioning that we have? And it's amazing. Even I was reflecting on this as I was actually preparing for this interview. Like, even to my boys, like, "Oh, can you just be a good boy?" And I know the amount of times I've said, "Oh, you just need to be a good girl." Or we say,
Aren't those girls good? They're doing the colouring in. Meanwhile, the boys are off causing chaos. But there's so much conditioning that, as you say, is literally thousands of years in the making.
Yeah, it just flies out of our mouths so easily.
It does.
So I think, Carina, like full permission here for all of us. None of us need to feel terrible about the fact that these words are flying out of our mouths. To your point, it has been, centuries of conditioning that have led us to this place. And so when I was teaching how do we care for our well-being in workplaces and schools and communities, and we're breaking the science down to really practical, easy to use tools, and we'd go back and we'd check in with people like, how are you going with that? And we'd find that we kept bumping up against the same problem over and over again. And it was, I really wanted to do that. I'm just too busy. And I said, I get that we're busy. I understand life's full of things, my life as well. And while some of those things we might not have a lot of control over, there are always some elements that we've chosen to be busy with. And that's okay. We've chosen to put those things first, often for really good reasons. But I'm just curious, like, what are they? What are the things that are more important for you to get done in a day than actually looking after your own well-being so that you can have more energy to get all the things done?
Yeah.
And when we kept scratching the surface of this, Karina, we kept bumping up against these societal expectations. So for women, it was this need to be the good girl, to feel like we were performing perfectly, that we were pleasing others, everybody else was happy with us first, that we were protecting everyone, whether that was through our silence or whether it was trying to fix everything for them, but that these were the priorities that went before ever having the capacity or space to be able to care for ourselves. Now, with guys, it's slightly different. They get a set of gender expectations as well, but theirs is more around being strong boys or tough guys. And we can talk about how that shows up too, but it was the women that really fascinated me, Karina, because I was like, oh, yes. Oh, I can so relate to it. And I really, up until that time, I thought it had just been me. It was like, I'm the only one. So I'm a little like tangled up in my own head around this performing perfectly, pleasing everyone, protecting others. And so I started to get curious about, well, how is this still playing out? Is this just, I'm a woman in my 50s? Was it just my generation? Is this still happening for young women today? And that was really what led to doing the research that then led into doing these different books that you mentioned.
And how are you then seeing that then show up still in this day and age? Because as we say, like I'm in my early 40s, you're in your 50s, like it's shown up in our generation. I even know with my niece, we still look at her and go, oh, isn't she a good girl? As opposed to her brother and her cousins that are running around. Like the language we still use around good girl is still being used today. So how is it showing up? And I know also we, not only about the good girl, but I would also say about the good mother as well, conditioning that we have so often.
And the good wife, right?
Yeah.
Ripples we see throughout our lives. So I'm a data nerd at heart, so I love it when I have the numbers to be able to play with. So last year we went and we surveyed more than 1,000 Australian women. They were randomly selected by an independent agency, and we asked them, do you feel this pressure to be a good girl? I was like, let's see what's really going on out there. And 2/3 of Australian women said, yep, I feel that pressure to be a good girl. And when we looked at it by age group, it was younger women aged 18 to 24 that were most likely to be reporting that pressure. Nearly 77% of them were putting up their hands, so more like 3/4 of them saying, I feel this pressure to be a good girl. And then we were unpacking with them, what does that mean? And again, coming up with these 3 very consistent themes. I need to be performing perfectly. It all needs to be done just right. At work, at home, it all should be just right. I need to make sure everybody else is happy with me first before I get to set boundaries or look after myself. And I need to be protecting other people. I'm doing their emotional work. I'm trying to make sure that, everybody else's side of the street is clean before I can worry about my own, so to speak. What the good news in that was that actually as the older we get, Karina, the more some of these beliefs taper off. So it was really older women, 55 plus, I'm coming to this moment, that were less likely to feel like they had to be good girls. But even then, it was like 56% of them were still feeling the pressure to be good. So to your point about this, hey, not just good girls, but good employee or good boss, depending what our roles might be, good mother, good wife, good grandmother, good aunt, like this need to be good. I think really gets cloaked across all of us. What drives us and why does this persist? Why does it persist, all these decades later? Sitting underneath of it, exactly as you're saying, we tend to teach it to each other because we're trying to keep each other safe and protected. Like when we say, hey, be a good girl, we're not trying to harm that beautiful girl in front of us, whatever her age is. We're often trying to say, hey, this is going to keep you safer in the world if you know how to comply and follow some of the rules and expectations that unfortunately for many of us still persist in society. I think back to the fact that my generation, Carina, was the first that were able to get a bank account without their father or husband signing for them.
Yes.
Like, oh my, that still blows my mind because I've never known a world where that was not my option. But it's only just over 50 years that actually, if I wasn't a good girl, I may not be able to get a bank account because my husband or the male responsible for me would not sign a permission to do so. I think the other thing besides unintentionally, again, perhaps with, good reasons passing it on to each other, is we do still live in a society that encourages us with kind of surround sound to be good girls at school, in our faith communities, often in our sporting environments, certainly in our work environments. And so, again, we often get these short-term rewards because others feel happy with us. We feel like we fit in. We get the kind of proverbial pats on the head, sometimes the physical as well. And so in the short term, it feels like it's paying off. But what we struggle to do is realize the long-term cost. And often what we saw in our research was it was around about our mid to late 30s that women start to go, this is absolutely unsustainable. And I'm exhausted. I'm becoming more and more resentful and annoyed at all this stuff I'm doing for everybody else. And I feel like I'm losing my sense of self. I actually don't feel like I know who I am anymore because I've been so busy twisting myself into the shapes that everybody else needs.
That seems to be certainly reoccurring themes that often I have in conversations relating to Working Mama and also with friends and also on the podcast here. Those reoccurring themes of, identity loss, burnout and the like. So what is, the consequence of that, particularly, given the audience of this podcast being working mums, that we feel like we've got this conditioning, we're recognizing that we're exhausted. What can we do to break that cycle and recognize it? Because obviously it's having significant impacts, no doubt, probably from an employee perspective, but also in the home, because it's exhausting, as you say, trying to protect everyone and be that good girl.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is realizing that while it's well intended, while we think we're good girls, we're good mothers, we're doing the right thing by everybody, even if it's coming at a cost to us, the big the shift for many of us is realizing that not only is it not good for us, it's actually not good for anybody else around us. And so how do we break free is one of the things I was fascinated in this research and talking to women of all ages and looking at what works. And here we kind of come back full circle. What we found from the women was not dissimilar to the things that we find work for all of us, regardless of gender, when it comes to thriving as human beings. And so the first thing is just knowing that this is just a set of gender expectations that the world around us has kind of created because it often benefits other people and they don't really think about the cost to us,
Yeah.
So it is just a story. It's a set of beliefs. It's not truly reality or how the world works. And that means that it's more malleable and flexible than perhaps we might have ever considered it before we're listening to this conversation in this moment. So first one is just to recognize it is just a mindset, a set of ideas and beliefs. And so it can be flexed. And it doesn't mean we have to throw the whole lot out.
Yeah.
Right? There might be parts of us that really enjoy being a good girl and that are really working for us. That's completely okay. You hang on to those bits. But if there are parts that aren't, how do we start to flex and break free of those? So then the second thing became, all right, what helps us do that breaking free where we need it? And we really found that there were 3 skills consistently that women kept pointing to. And that, again, the research on human thriving would absolutely support. The first of those was self-compassion. So can we just be wise and kind friends to ourselves, like we're busy being to everybody else, and just go, hey, we have these weird beliefs that we grew up with. They don't always serve us. They're not absolutely true. You don't have to be a good girl all the time if it's not serving you. And what fascinated me in the research, we asked women, well, what's the alternative to this?
Yeah.
Girl? Is it a bad girl? Like, what's going on here? The women most consistently called this, I just want to be my unique self. So we called it being uniquely you. Okay, how do you get to be uniquely you? What would that self-compassionate, wise and kind friend say is okay for you right now? The second skill was around secure attachment. So as parents, we might have read some of the research or tools around how do we help our children feel safe with us, feel securely attached, that when the world is going crazy, they know we'll show up for them, we'll support them, we'll help set healthy boundaries around them. Well, we need the same thing for ourselves, right? It's hard to give what you don't have. So in this case, how do we be securely attached to self? How do we let ourselves know, you know what? I got you, girl. Like, I will show up for you. I will ask for help when you need it. I will advocate for you. I will set healthy boundaries for you. We need to know that we will do those things for ourselves and not keep abandoning ourselves or throwing ourselves under the bus. Otherwise, it's very hard to trust ourselves in these different scenarios. And then the third and final one was self-leadership. And this comes out of the internal family systems work, which some of your listeners may have come across. It's become more popular the last few years as a form of therapy. Internal family systems just notices that, you know what, we all have these different parts inside of us that tend to take shape as we're growing up. I don't know about you, Carina, but I have a clean the house part that says if somebody's coming over to visit, I have to clean everything top to toe in a mad frenzy and make it all look perfect because, underneath it's not really.
Yeah, because it's the iceberg effect. Oh, the house is clean, everything's okay.
It makes me a very tense host.
Yes.
And probably my house not that relaxing to be in because I'm putting a lot of other pressure on every mother that comes to visit me. And so that's just a part of me. There's a part of me that when I'm scared and I feel vulnerable, I want to clean the house and pretend that it's all okay. We all have these different parts, the kind of coping mechanisms that, often don't serve us as well as they could.
Yeah.
But we all also have what they call self-energy, and this is self with a capital S. And that self-energy is our capacity to be curious and creative and compassionate and calm and courageous and confident and clear and connected with each other. And again, we all have moments where we tap into that. They're often when we're feeling like we're us at our best. And so this self-leadership is how do we let that, that self, that wiser, kinder, again, part of ourselves lead the way rather than those parts of us that are generally generated by fear sort of take charge too often. It doesn't mean we're getting rid of those parts, but we're kind of going, you know what? I'm a 52-year-old woman now. I can probably have people in my house and it'd be messy and it won't be the end of the world. And it might be the kindest thing for all of us. So now it's making you a bit anxious, but trust me, let's just see how this time goes. If it doesn't work next time, we can go back to cleaning everything up like a manic fiend.
Yeah.
So these three skills, self-compassion, can we be wise and kind friends to ourselves? Secure attachment, can we advocate for ourselves, not abandon ourselves? And then self-leadership, can we kind of lead from a place of love instead of fear in the ways that we're showing up in any domains in our lives, are what helps us break free.
And that's a really good framework to do. One of the things as well, I know that's not as easy as it sounds because
not at all.
sometimes I know even like our internal voice, when we talk about self-compassion, can actually probably be our biggest person working against it, the mindset and the inner voice that is working against us because we're thinking, and I guess it's that social conditioning and we've got to be this and this is what we think it is. Changing that and that, I guess, attitude and holding up that mirror to ourselves is quite confronting. And I know that on your website, you've got a survey about, where do you rank on this? I did it and I scored a lot lower than what I thought I would. So it's actually a bit of a mirror of going, oh my goodness, I know that I've still got some work to do in this space. So it's quite hard to move through this, or I wouldn't say necessarily just hard, but it's a bit of a challenge, isn't it?
Yes, I think don't underestimate that right now, if you're feeling very entrenched in those good girl behaviors and finding it hard to break free, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just that your brain over the course of your life has developed these neural pathways, these ways of thinking and behaving that are almost automatic. You don't even sort of think twice before you realize what you've done. And so it's going to take some time to sort of reshape those neural pathways into new ways. I think for me, Karina, one of the big ahas was understanding that the number one job of our brain is to keep us safe.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
if we're safe, we're alive. And like the whole thing's over if we're not safe and alive, right? And so I like to imagine almost like at the base of my skull where the back of my head meets my neck. But this is where our brain stem sits. And our brain stem takes in lots of the information coming at us every day, all the comments from other people and what we're seeing and reading in the world and what we can feel others doing and how we respond to that. So that brainstem takes in lots of information. And I like to imagine there that there's like a little safety dial that's constantly going as all that information comes in. Safe enough or not safe enough? Safe enough or not safe enough? When we're not safe enough, it kicks our nervous system into its protection circuits. And our nervous system runs from kind of the base of the stem down, like you think about like a big curvy kind of line, down into our heart, down through our body, and it kind of finishes up in our gut. And it moves a lot of the blood and oxygen around our body. So when we get not safe enough, the nervous system goes, oh, I need to protect Carina right now. Let's move that blood and oxygen out into her hands and her legs so she's ready with her stress responses to fight, flee, freeze, fawn, or flop, as the case may be.
Yeah.
Right? And this is generally where many of those good girl behaviors are, right? Think about your need to perform perfectly. It might be your fight response, or maybe it's your fawn response. I'm going to just make this all work. Think about your need to please and look after everybody. Again, that's often our fawn response in play. Think about your need to protect others. That could be kicking in your freeze or your fight or your flee response, depending on what the form of protection is looking like. So these good girl behaviors are often these stress responses where we're trying to get our brain back to feeling safe enough. Like, it's okay, I did the good girl thing. We're all safe now. We can resume sort of where we were. And when the brain feels safe enough, our connection circuit instead of our protection circuit is happening in the body. And that moves the blood and oxygen back up towards the forehead where the front of the brain is. And this is where our prefrontal cortex sits. It's where we do all our best thinking. And it's where we are, all those self-energy things, clear and calm and courageous and confident and stuff like that. So again, just knowing that what's going on when you're finding it hard to break free isn't because you're a loser, you can't do this, you're not self-disciplined enough, you don't deserve it. It's that right now your brain truly believes that being safe enough will depend on acting these good girl behaviors out. And so our first sort of shifting place is helping one just to notice, whoa, I went all good girl in that moment.
Yeah.
I wasn't safe. What made me not feel safe there? And just seeing then if over time, as we start to spot it, we can slow down that reaction so that we can keep the blood and oxygen moving back up towards the front of the head rather than kicking that protection circuit in. And if you want, Carina, we can try a couple of really simple things together that listeners can do that might help them with that. But I know that was a lot to take in. So let me pause there first.
Yeah, not a problem. And how do we also, like, as you say, there's that, I guess, that fight or flight and the 5 Fs as you outlined. Sometimes it can also be a little bit uncomfortable, I know, at the start. If you may actually say no to something or create some of those boundaries of thinking, well, this isn't making me feel safe, I then say no. Whereas in the past, you're going, I'm doing this just to be a people pleaser, to be the good girl. How does it can be a bit uncomfortable to start, I guess, unpacking and maybe even standing up to some of those, I guess, would say in inverted commas, good girl behaviors of going, no, this doesn't sit right with me. I'm going to do something that lights me up and makes me feel my unique self, is what you said.
Yeah. So step one there is knowing, oh, I want to go to those good girl behaviors. So something is triggering or happening for me right now that makes me feel like safe enough will just be saying yes to that thing and keeping everybody else happy, even though I don't want to do it. It doesn't feel right for me. So if we can start to notice it before we do it, and that in itself takes a bit of practice. So sometimes I say, like, often you'll only notice after you've done it initially, and that's okay because you're still noticing. See if you can start to figure out where the triggers are, and then you'll get a little bit better over time at noticing, oh, there's that thing. I'm about to say yes again to something I don't want to do. Remember, I didn't want to do it that way. So once we've started to be able to see it, The second step then is we need to be able to soothe the nervous system, because until we can make the nervous system feel safe enough again, we can't kind of get that next thinking step about, well, how am I going to say no? And be okay with the fact that people might not be happy with it, but that it was the right thing for me. So we actually need to soothe the body. We can't just jump straight to doing the thing. We need to make the body feel safe enough so we can then execute the thing. And so we can soothe the nervous system with really tiny little somatic nudges. One of my favorites is even just if you're mid-conversation and you're trying to just slow things down, and maybe we can try this together. I'll demonstrate it first. But it's as simple as, Yeah, you might hear me doing a very like I'm really thinking about that right now. So let's just try it and see what happens in our bodies when we do it. So one of the things often when we're in that protection zone is that our vocal cords tighten up, the throat constricts. It's part of our stress responses. So if you try with me, we're just going to take a nice slow deep breath in here, and then nice and loud for as long as you can. And maybe as you did that, you felt a little vibration down through the vocal cords and maybe even into the top of the chest there. And so again, we're just relaxing the throat. We're letting the nervous system know, hey, right now we're safe enough just to pause and about this. And that means we're not in real danger. So let's get the blood and oxygen back to the front of the head. And then next we'll figure out what to do about it. Before we go there, let me give you two other really quick ones. If we take one hand and we place it over the opposite wrist, so if you can, skin on skin. So you sort of almost like you're sort of shaking your wrist there. But your fingers underneath on the underside of your wrist. So they're almost sitting there on the pulse point, just nice and lightly. So you've got your hand wrapped around the wrist there. And again, you want skin on skin, not on watches or clothing. And then you can drop your hand down on your table, your lap, wherever feels comfortable. And we'll take a nice slow breath in here. And a nice slow breath out. And another nice slow breath in here. And a nice slow breath out. And we call this an oxytocin shot. And the reason being that oxytocin is one of our care hormones. It helps to calm and soothe our body. And it particularly helps lower our cortisol, which is one of those stress hormones. And the reason that this can work is that if we can do skin on skin of just calm touch while we're breathing for about 7 seconds, studies suggest it can only take that long for you to do it, although I often hang out there way longer. It just helps to bring some oxytocin, just to again, calm the nervous system back down so we can get the blood and oxygen back in the front of the head. Last little quick one for you. This one you can do with your toes, and I like these because I can do them anywhere nobody notices. So with your toes, I'll ask you just to stretch your toes out towards wherever, maybe the tip of your shoes if you've got them on, or the wall. But just as you breathe in, stretch your toes out. And now as you exhale, curl your toes in. And as you inhale, stretch your toes out. And as you exhale, curl your toes in. And the trick here as you keep going is to make it as small and as slow as you possibly can. And again, this is going to get your brain going, hey, what's going on down there with your toes? And the moment our brain gets curious, we get to move out of that good girl programming and give our brain just enough space to think about, hey, I am safe enough. How do I want to respond rather than react? And then we can move to that third and final step, which might be in this case to say no to somebody, to say, hey, thanks for thinking of me for that, or I appreciate you asking me, or hey, I always try to do what I can to support you. Whatever helps to be that bridge of acknowledgement about the vulnerability it takes to ask someone for something. But then you just want to land it and say, not this time. Yeah, I'm sorry, now's not a good time. Or no, I'm not really that interested in that. Or even just, hey, no. And that can be your whole sentence right there. But again, often we expect ourselves to go from the trigger to the action, and we miss the somatic part for our bodies in between. And so that's what we found is so important to help us be able to do the action and follow through on the action.
Yeah. And then how does it then go from a mindset perspective that the more that you do this, I guess you're rewiring your brain to say, yes, it's okay?
Well, in a couple of ways, right? So number one, each time you do that, you're building some different neural pathways. So we were talking about these good girl behaviors are often so entrenched because we've done them for so long. That's how our brain is wired to work right now. So every time we choose to do it differently, we get to change some of that wiring. And the other thing we do know from studies is that if you can celebrate as soon as you've done that, so maybe you say the no, hang up, or, you walk away, whatever. But the first chance you get, kind of like happy dance or pat yourself on the back or go me, whatever it is. But you want it again to be like a somatic, a physical act of just, yay for me, I did the thing. That sense of celebration releases dopamine, which are some of those happy chemicals that our brain loves. And it does two important things. It helps you remember, oh, this was a good feeling when I did it. So next time it comes up, you're more likely to do it rather than adding up all the costs of what will happen if you don't do what everybody wants you to do. But the second thing is dopamine helps to build those neural pathways more quickly, to consolidate them. So it's like a little bit of like fertilizer on the brain. Celebrating that you made that you showed up for yourself, that you advocated for you, that you were uniquely you in this moment, every chance you get is really important to help shift that neural wiring.
That's amazing tips and such good ways I guess people need to be able to help move through this. And I know you had some research, Shell, that found 78%, which I can't believe, of women strive for perfection to avoid criticism. And I know that a number of women will be scrolling on, say, Instagram and thinking this person's got a perfect life, and then they have that comparisonitis. And there's always this thing about trying to be the perfect mum, which we all know is, certainly not achievable. And it's just not, it's not fair. What way do you think this then perfection really shows up for working mums? And I think also, what's the impact and cost that comes with this? Because there's a lot around at the moment for working mums and expectations. And it's what you're saying earlier, it's exhausting and tiring.
Yeah. There's some beautiful research from a woman called Dr. Carol Dweck at Stanford University. She has a wonderful book called Growth Mindset. I actually think every parent should read it, both for ourselves and for our children. And in fact, if you ask your kids about growth mindset, chances are they're already being taught it in schools. It's in a lot of school curriculums now in Australia. But Carol has a great TED Talk, a book I highly recommend. If this is new to you, go check it out. But in essence, what Carol points out for many of us who are perfectionists is that we have this underlying belief that the way that we will be judged by ourselves and others is on the things that people can see, the outcomes that we're achieving. So is my house super clean? Are my kids polite and well behaved? Are my kids doing well at school and in all the extracurriculars? Are they dressed with the right things, right? We truly believe that this is how we will be judged as the sum of us. And that's why we work so hard to get it all right, so that then we'll feel safe enough and that we're okay and our kids are okay. But Carol points out that kind of underlying this is this belief that, that this is a reflection on how intelligent and talented and capable we are. And so if we let any of those balls drop, somehow it'll show the world that we're not who they thought we were, right? We're the imposters we've always secretly known ourselves to be. And what Carol's research has found out is that whether it's raising kids, whether it's in our relationships, whether it's with our physical health, whether it's with our jobs, every domain of life, what tends to happen is that in this, she calls it a fixed mindset, where we're trying to get it all just right, we eventually start to bump up against our limitations because criticism feels personal and painful, because that's like, oh, now you are judging me, that I'm not up for it. Failure feels shameful. So we try to avoid it at all costs. And if we do fail, we like to sweep it under the rug, keep going, nothing to see here. Blame somebody else or something else. It wasn't us.
Not me.
Exactly. And we tend to prefer to be big fishes in a small pond. We don't like to get too far out of our comfort zone. And so all of this robs us of learning opportunities. So what's the alternative? Carol talks about this growth mindset. So in a growth mindset, we come into the world with this belief of, I have some talent and intelligence and abilities, but you know what? With effort and practice, I can always get better than where I am. And so rather than judging ourselves and others on just the outcomes, what we're looking more for is, what's the effort? Where's the learning? What are you figuring out as you go? And what Carol's research finds is that when we start to value effort and learning, not only does it make it easier to hear criticism and get feedback because it doesn't feel so personal.
Yeah.
Like, okay, it might be a slightly rough gift, but it's like, okay, at least you're telling me and I can take or leave from that what I want to continue
And I can
to
also
improve
learn and
myself.
grow and develop. Yep.
Right. And when I fail, it's not fatal. It's like, "Oh, that didn't go the way I want.
Yeah.
But what do I get to take from that?" And so what Carol finds then is rather than this kind of peaking early, if you like, and then never getting better, in a growth mindset, we harness the way our brains are wired to perform at their best, and we keep learning and growing throughout our lives. So I like to bring all of this down to two really simple things that might be helpful for our listeners today. One is the simple truth is we are all perfectly imperfect, and that nature made us this way intentionally so that we could learn and grow and adapt as the world around us and within us keeps changing. If we are perfect just as we are now, it locks us off from that learning and growth capacity. And that actually makes us more fragile in the long run when things keep shifting, and things do keep shifting.
The one constant is change, as we know.
Exactly right. So just know you are perfectly imperfect, just like everybody else. And as Carol once said to me, "Oh, doesn't that take the pressure off, Michelle?" And I was like, "Yeah, it does."
If we know that we change that mindset around, I'm constantly learning, I'm going to be imperfect, because I often say we're all stuffing our kids up at some point, but
Exactly. All
if
of
we
it.
know that
the
that's
job.
acceptable,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then just stuff them up so they've got something to learn and grow and build resilience from.
exactly.
But the second tool I love that Carol has, and at the end of her TED Talk, she has this beautiful letter from a boy that's been taught her research. And he says to her, writes to her, "Dear Dr. Dweck," he says, "Thank you for your research. I like the fact it's based on science, but I now realize I've wasted my whole life." This is a kid who's about 9 years old. He said, "I've wasted my whole life trying to be perfect instead of, grabbing all the learning opportunities that were in front of me." So Carol has this beautiful tool called Be a Yeti. So Be a Yeti simply means that when that inner critic is piping up going, "You're such a loser, Carina. You didn't get the introduction to the podcast right. You messed up the time. The kids went to school today without the right permission slip signed," that self-compassionate voice instead is reminding you, you're just not there yet. You're just not there yet, right?
And that's okay.
You didn't get the permission slip there yet. What do you want to learn to get it right tomorrow?
Yeah.
And that is just, again, welcome to the human race. It is what we were put on this earth to do. It is the point of this human adventure. So I love this one. My kids and I have used it since they were little, about we're going to be a Yeti. And every time I hear a story from them about, "I'm no good at maths," or "I can't clean up my bedroom," I will add, "Yet." You can't do it yet. What do you need to learn so that we can grow? And every time I'm back in my perfectionistic cleaning the house, okay, I'm not there yet with letting everybody see how messy my home really is. What would help me next time?
But I think that's a really good mindset shift, that we may not be there yet. And it's also giving us permission, because we feel we've got all these pressures and things like that about what we're needing to do. But as you say, we're not there yet. And even just adding that one simple word at the end of a sentence, as you say, it really opens up that growth mindset to allow us to grow and develop and adapt. Like, there is no rule book. There is no guidebook to motherhood or even being a human. We're all built differently. We all have little idiosyncrasies. Same with our children. They've got the same genetic makeup, but they are so different personalities. So I love that, in that it gives ourselves permission to be, as you say, perfectly imperfect, rather than that good girl condition, replacing that with perfectly imperfect.
Yeah. And again, it gets us back to self-compassion. So, Carina, where you were talking earlier about, for many of us, that inner critic is so hardwired in our brain. And we do see generally people's self-compassion scores are way lower than they expect, just as you found doing that little survey tool on our website. And so I love Yet, because it's like, oh, my wise and kind friend is coming in and remind me that I'm just not there yet. It's okay. And I think it also makes space for context. And context matters hugely in these things, to your point about what's right for one child won't be right for the other child, even though we're in the same family. And what's right for one family won't be the playbook that's suitable for another family.
No.
And what's right for a family in this moment won't necessarily be right in 3 months' time or 3 years' time. And so, again, it allows us more of that fluidity to be more flexible and agile as the world's around us and within each of us keeps changing.
Yeah. So just building on that as well, I know a lot of mums feel a lot of struggle between wanting a career and also wanting to be a mum. And I guess also intertwined with that, there's that, the good mum mentality but also then you've got to be the good employee. What way can we navigate this? Obviously, we're not there yet, but what way can we also navigate to, I guess, bring ourselves a little bit at peace of having both roles, being able to both be a mum as well as a career, and I guess have really debunk some of those myths on what a good mum is?
Yeah, so we like to, as we were touching on earlier, think about a bit like a continuum, like a line with two ends to it.
Mm.
That at one end we've got these good girl behaviors, and at the other end we've got these uniquely you behaviors. And where any of us might be on any day, in any situation along that continuum, which way we're leaning more towards, again, is the choice for each of us to make. And the way that we're figuring out, how do you make that choice? So let's talk about, do I want to be at work? Do I need to be at home? Like, what is the right thing for me and my family at this moment in time? We found in the research that there were two questions that really helped women figure this out, whether it was work or anything else. And the first question was, on whose terms?
Oh, great
Terms
question.
am I deciding where along that continuum is the right place for me to be right now?
Mm.
And while it's rarely ever just all my terms, although it may sometimes be, generally as mums, it's a bit of my terms. It's a bit of my kids' terms. It might be a bit of, my partner's terms if I'm in a partnered relationship. It could be a bit on my employer's terms if I've already got a job. But what it can't be is always at my cost. Yeah, it can't never be on my terms, at least not for very long, because it's not sustainable. So on whose terms, number one, is that question being answered about work, home, what does it look like? And then secondly, for whose benefit? So who's benefiting from this? If this is all on my boss's terms, for example, and then is it mostly just their benefit? Is there a bit for my family's benefit? Is there any for my benefit?
Yeah.
We're social creatures and we live in community with each other. So it's rarely ever just all one way that's going to work. But what we find for so many of us when we're trapped more in those good girl mindsets is that there's just not enough of our terms and our benefits on that continuum. And that often helps us sort of play with a bit more flexibility to what is the right answer for me? What is the right answer for my family? What is the right answer for us, which might be my workplace as well? And just what does that look like? And the last thing I would say, and again, having been sort of at all stages along that journey, a stay-at-home mum juggling young kids and work, and now with older kids and coming out sort of the empty nest starting end of that journey, is that when I am happy and well, everybody else around me has much more chance of being happy and well as well. But when I am exhausted and overwhelmed, I cannot keep giving what I do not have to anybody else. And so even though, and I certainly don't know about you, Carina, I was growing up with the worst thing you could call me was selfish. You're being so selfish, that in our house, that was like, like if you've
Got
gone
no
selfish,
idea.
you've got, we were quite religious. You'd have to start praying for your soul if you were selfish. And so it has taken a lot for me to learn that there is nothing selfish about looking after me and also making sure some of my terms and my benefits are in there. In fact, it is the kindest and most respectful thing I can do for everybody else who depends and relies on me, because if there's not some element of my terms and my benefit in there, the whole thing is a house of cards that is about to collapse.
Yeah, and you'll certainly no doubt get burnt out, resentful, and it's not going to help anyone. And I know so many times we'll often say women are and particularly mums, are the heartbeat of the family. And if our heart is not beating strong, something is not going to survive. And certainly, long term, there are impacts, both positive as well as negative, generally on the negative side.
Yeah, and Carina, it helped me because I was an overfunctioner. I think like many of us are as mums, like I was way overcompensating and overdoing things for everyone when I looked at that continuum. So the other thing that helped me, besides realizing that that was prioritizing me into the mix, at least that it had to have some benefit for me, wasn't selfish, was that actually it was also respectful
Mm.
to allow other people, my kids, my partner, my employees, the space that they could look after themselves a bit more than what I was over functioning in an effort to kind of micromanage everybody in my world so that all the parts would be where I thought they should be, but that actually that was not respectful. And nobody else was asking me to constantly put myself last, that this was just a set of societal conditioning ideas that I'd grown up with and was never really questioning. And so even though initially there was when I started prioritizing more of me, there was a bit of, what are you doing? Like, oh no, and definitely my mother at the time did have some accusations of selfish in my direction. I was like, actually, I'm doing this from absolutely not a selfish place. I'm doing it from a place of respect, that I want you all to have your own learning and growth in the things that are important to you. And if I keep over functioning and micromanaging this all for everybody, not only am I exhausted, but I'm not doing you any favors either. So again, those two shifts for me personally were really helpful to give me the permission I needed to step more towards that uniquely you end of the continuum more consistently.
Yeah. And also when you do that, it's amazing how maybe even your children or your partner is what we often talk about with the mental load are then forced to step up or take initiatives and things that can really allow them to grow and develop as opposed to you. I guess it's from that social conditioning of the good girl of going, I need to do everything. I need to make sure everyone's okay. And they've got the birthday present, they've got things when really, when you think about it, why do I have to do all that? I
Yeah.
don't have to take on so much,
Yeah.
to try and protect everyone. They can also take some responsibility for themselves. Because
Yeah.
as you were saying earlier, they might not be able to do it yet. They might not, they can
will
clean up,
learn if
but
they're
they
given
can
the
do it
chance.
tomorrow.
And it might not be the way I wanted it done, but it's their way, and that's okay, right? I think again, learning what's important to be attached to and what it helps to let go of in that mix is definitely useful. And I started asking my kids, like, for Christmas Day, like, does anybody else care about this except me?
Yeah.
If it's just me, I'm good without it.
Yeah.
So why am I running around doing 500 things when actually there's only 3 things you really care about and I could just do the 3 things instead? So again, I think just opening up some space as to if you're doing it for you and you love it that way, keep going. But if you're doing it for everybody else, I do think sometimes it's worth checking in. How much does it really matter to them? Or did we just get an idea along the way somehow that this was what it was meant to be?
Yeah. No, so good. Now, is there anything else, Shell? I know we could talk about this all day, and I love talking about these kind of topics and really rewiring social conditioning because it has such an impact on the way that we show up, not only in the home, but also in the workplace. Is there anything else that you want to just, I guess, impart as on working mums that are listening, just, I guess, summarize some of your research, which I know is really hard. So, yes.
It's okay. I would just say go gently. Yeah, like we don't have to do all of this at once. Go gently. Just meet yourself where you are today. Perhaps even this idea of these good girl beliefs existing might be new language or new things that just sit with that for a little while and see how it goes. Perhaps you're a bit further down that path and you're like, oh yes, some of those self-compassion practices or somatic nudges are helpful. See if you can start playing with some of those. Or maybe you're all the way there and it's those questions on whose terms, for whose benefit, start to become a really helpful way to navigate moment to moment through your day, how you want to show up. So just go gently, start at the place that feels like it's calling to your body and your heart and your brain, and then just lots of grace as you go. None of us are getting this right all of the time, I promise.
And it won't be easy at the start, but it will get easier, won't it?
It definitely does. And that celebration, as weird as it sounds, like, do a happy dance, pat on the back, high five yourself, as weird as that might sound and feel initially, lots of good science behind it. So I think we could all do with more pats on the back, Karen.
Yes. And I know as mums that we often tear ourselves down pretty quickly. Oh my goodness, I'm not doing a good enough job. But definitely celebrate those wins because no doubt you're actually having more wins than what you give yourself credit for. So, Shell, what do you do for self-care and to really give yourself that self-compassion?
Yeah, I'm lucky. I live about 5 minutes walk from the beach. And so most mornings I try to be out as the sun's coming up have a little dog that says he wants to walk every morning. And I get down to that sand and I put my hands down into the sand. So I sit and I ground with beautiful Mother Earth. And just remember that there is so much more than whatever I'm going to navigate in my day that is happening in the world today. And really, I'm just that small part. And if I can, I try to get back down there around sunset as well and do that same sort of thing. So I like to have really simple grounding practices that can bring me back to the fact that we are all part of a world so much larger than anything that is happening in our day. And to remember that it's been doing it for millennia and is still here doing it amazingly well today, and to just have some gratitude for that.
Amazing. Now, how can people find out about your work and your books? And we'll also include a link to the survey in the show notes, because I have to say it's actually quite a good reflective exercise.
Amazing. Yeah. So head to thegoodgirlgamechangers.com. I know that's a mouthful. Thegoodgirlgamechangers.com. And the link will be in the show notes, or you can look for Michelle McQuaid on Google and things will start popping up. On that website, we have podcasts with all sorts of amazing experts, and my dear colleague Evie Wright, who's a yoga teacher, brings all this somatic stuff, and lots of free tools and other things that you can go play with, as well as the survey.
And definitely check out the book as well.
Thanks.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Shell, for today's chat. I know I could keep talking to you about this. So I love this topic of rewiring, and also the societal implications that we've had on mothers and women. So thank you so much. And also thank you so much for the research and the work that you're doing in this space to, I guess, have a fact-based discussion. It's not just about what we're feeling, but you're really providing the evidence to give the facts around the way that we're feeling. So we don't feel like, oh, no, my goodness, it's not just me, as what you said at the start, but really validating and helping mothers and women be seen in this place. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Carina.